Hare Krishna. So, Hare Krishna will start Bhagavad Gita chapter 7. So, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it is said, no, like unlike other religious books, it is not something only related to, no, like teachings or instructions. No, if you take any other religious books, it will be like instructions only, like uh, no, like any other like Bible or Quran or anything like that. It won't be like practical application. Mm. So Bhagavad Gita is like a science, no? Like it explains different ways of living and different modes and different conditions, and how people in different who opt for living in different ways will, and what will be the resultant of their activity, what will be the resultant of their process, you know? Like uh, it classifies entire, it says entire material existence can be created into three modes, you know, like material living, mm, like the way we dress, the way the food we eat, the way, you know, our consciousness, everything can be divided into mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance, you know? And also it describes about different varnashram systems. It describes about uh, different process of yoga, how to reconnect to the supreme. mm. So basically that's the reason Bhagavad Gita is called a book of applications. So that's why it is said that if we apply the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, we can find answers for everything in Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is now so lively that now once you develop good familiarity with Bhagavad Gita, means good understanding of Bhagavad Gita, and and when you start reading daily, or when you start applying the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it will be so lively that when you are confused, no, um, and the many preachers say that, no, I also experienced many times. If you are confused, and one sloka or one uh, the knowledge, the one understanding will come into your mind, no, without your knowledge, our knowledge only. So that means Bhagavad Gita is none other than Krishna himself. Mm. So our endeavor here is only, no, just to introduction, like, no, introduction, superficial introduction to Bhagavad Gita, no, so that you will come to know what is there in Bhagavad Gita. So then you will take up, like it is like, introducing ourselves to Bhagavad Gita, you know. If somebody, some new persons comes to us and we don't know who he is, and it is very difficult to open up a conversation with him. So, but one friend comes to us, one of our friend comes to us and explains about that person, how that person is related to us, then we'll be able to better correlate with him, and by and we'll be able to develop a relationship with him, and we'll be have a nice loving relationship with that person. So that is what we are doing now. We are just trying to now get introduced to Bhagavad Gita. So, and you should not leave these sessions like this only, because you have to understand what Bhagavad Gita is teaching, and we have to, apply the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and you have to live the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. That way you will be protected not only materially but also spiritually. Mm? And you can attain better destinations both materially and spiritually, and you will come to know what to be given importance and what to be not given to importance, how to lead life properly. So that is the outcome of application of knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. But still, even hearing Bhagavad Gita also is very auspicious, you know. So the, as we said previously, the entire book of Bhagavad Gita is divided into three sections. First, Bhagavad Gita entirely has 18 chapters, and first six chapters deals about, karma yoga, or different types of yogas are explained there. And then first 1 to 6 chapters, and 7th to 12th chapter deals with bhakti yoga. Mm. And 13th to 18th chapters deal with jnana yoga. So it is like, that's why the Bhagavad Gita book is, compared to a, uh, burger, like, where the essence is in the middle. or it can be compared to be a king's entourage. Like, because when a when king goes out, there will be some a portion of the army walks his friend on his in his front, and a portion of the army walks behind him, so that they will give all round protection to him. And the essence, the main person, the king and his ministers will be in the middle, so that they will be nicely well respected and well treated in all the circumstances. So in the same way, the first 6 chapters, they deal with karma and Ashtanga yoga and Dhyana yoga. So these are all we are already dealing with karma in our day-to-day life. No doubt, nobody has to tell how to make a living, or how to eat, or how to do eat meats, eating, mating, sleeping, and defending. That nobody has to teach, because even the animals also have that instinct. By they can they can they can by themselves uh, easily do that thing without any extra effort. What makes uh, so but in the first 6 chapters, it also explains about different process of yoga. Means it explains about karma yoga, it explains about dhyana yoga, it explains about ashtanga yoga. So uh, like so after that, Krishna introduces, like, at the end of sixth chapter. mm, at the end of sixth chapter, the last verse of sixth chapter, no, when Krishna, after Krishna describing, Krishna actually describes before this verse, Krishna describes, that yogi is above a karmi, yogi is above a jnani. So in all circumstances, you be like a yogi. Mm. So we already discussed, right, what is the meaning of yoga, what is the purpose of yoga. Yoga purpose is to reconnect us back to Krishna, because we actually had a loving relationship with Krishna, but due to some circumstances or due to some reasons, that loving relationship is broken. Means, like, just like, if some good friends are there, but due to some differences their relationship is broken. uh, and when we are trying to reconnect or re-establish our last relationship with him, that is called yoga. So we had a loving relationship with Krishna, but we actually lost it due to some reasons, and yoga helps us to reconnect us back to God. So after saying to Arjuna that you should be like a yogi in all circumstances, Krishna says, yoginam api sarvesham madgata madgata madgate nantaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo matah. Means Krishna is saying, uh, of all the yogis, the yogi who actually, shraddhavan bhajate yomam, who actually, always worships me and what do you call, glorifies me with devotion, that kind of yogi is best. He's the best among of all the yogis. That's what he says. So for that, means actually Krishna is explaining, Krishna is actually saying, of all the yogis, bhakti yogi is the highest. Mm. So then he starts explaining about how to do bhakti, how what is the process, what is the method of doing bhakti. So for somebody, if bhakti is, the another definition of bhakti is devotional service. And devotional service means loving devotional service. mm. The another meaning of bhakti is love. Mm. So if you see, bhakti means to adore and to, to always be attached to. Like, if we love someone, what will we do? No, we serve him in some manner. Like, for suppose, parents love kids, what mother love the child, what does mother do? She takes good care of the child, and she always child conscious. What is my child doing? Is it eaten or not? Is he taking rest or no? Or is, like, does the child need anything? Mother will be always thinking about the child, right? because it is due to the love. So bhakti is also, the another definition of bhakti is love. Okay. Actually love is meant for Krishna only. So Krishna says, or like when we have such kind of affection to other thing, it will call affection or something. But if you have the same affection towards God, that is called bhakti. When we have that affection that a mother has on child, or a lover has on her beloved, or a friend with her, with his or her own friend. So if such an affection is there between two people, that is, that can be termed in different way. This is affection or friendship, or no, like that. But the same affection is towards Krishna is called bhakti. Okay. So for one to develop such a devotion to Krishna, one should first actually, we should know about Krishna. Who is Krishna, like that. So actually when we on our day-to-day life we come across something, right? uh, we come across some person, no, some no, unknown person, and when we see that person, we may have some first impression, we may get some first impression. Okay, this person is looking nice, or he is respectable, or he's not looking nice, some first impression we'll get. But if we hear the about that person, uh, how we are related to that person, what that person has done to us, and the greatness of that person, then we actually develop some kind of affinity towards that person. Means some kind of affection, or some kind of favor toward, or no, uh, inclination towards building a relationship with that person. So unless we hear about a person, no, if for suppose a boy and girl met, so and due to some no internal no youthful desires, they may get some kind of attraction in the beginning. But when they come to know about each other, when they talk and when they have this exchanges, then their relationship will become stronger and stronger. In the same way, when we see Krishna, when we when we see the worship of Krishna, that is only, no, it will give only kind of certain kind of attraction, it will only brings little closer. But when we hear about Krishna, or when we know about Krishna, when we know about the qualities of Krishna, how Krishna is no, bhakta vatsala, how Krishna is hmm, suhridam sarvabhutanam, he is the friend of all the living entities, or how Krishna is always uh, loving towards, he has loving disposition towards his devotees. How Krishna loves his devotees, how Krishna protects his devotees. So and what who is Krishna? If some, you see, if some person comes into our room and sit beside us, we'll think, oh, this person is ordinary person, like no, it's like out of many people I see, is one among them. But if you come to know, oh, he is the topmost billionaire of the entire, he is the wealthiest person of entire planet, then our entire consciousness changes. Or he is the most generous person, he is most friendly person, he is a very celebrated person throughout the universe, then our what do you call, our the way we look at that person will change drastically. So when we hear the greatness of Krishna, then we develop a loving attraction towards Krishna. Because Krishna, even though he was so great, now if you see the cover page of Bhagavad Gita, you will be seeing Krishna driving the chariot of Arjuna. Who is Krishna? Krishna is, the Vedas glorify him as Parabrahma, Parantama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. Means he is Parabrahma. He is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is the God of all gods. No, there is nobody equal to him. Asamordva. There is nobody equal to him. No, nobody greater than him. And he is maintaining entire spiritual world and material world. But still, he is coming and to a position and driving a chariot for his devotee. If you see, like, if you take a most wealthiest person, for suppose, like, who is right now, Bill Gates. It used to be Bill Gates, right? Right now, who is, I don't know. Maybe like, in India, like, Ambani is there. Okay, If he drives, no, if he keeps his driver in his car and then drives car for him, it's a sensation, right? Slow like this or even the Prime Minister of India coming to assist somebody, some one of his friend, or coming to his marriage and driving the car for his or for his occasion. It's a sensation. It will be in the all over the news, right? So Krishna is such a person who is worshipped by great demigods like Indra, Shiva, Brahma. That person is coming and driving a chariot of Arjuna. So that is one of the glory, when he is dealing with Sudama, he is dealing with Draupadi, and he is dealing with Pandavas, and he is dealing with other devotees, are so sweet, and he even gets so submissive that he was even bounded by Mother Yashoda out of love. So that is the greatness of Krishna. So that is another level, means that is the rasa in the form of Madhurya, Vatsalya, that kind of rasas that Krishna exchanges with these devotees. But when we know who is that person who is actually doing all these things, but when we see Krishna as some ordinary boy, he actually does his leela such a way that he appears that ordinary person, but he is an extraordinary person. So hearing about Krishna, knowing little bit of about him is helpful in developing a nice relationship with Krishna. So it is said that by hearing shastras, the process to get the knowledge and deep faith. Knowledge means to know matter and spirit and the source of both. So knowledge of absolute, that knowledge which fixes us in the service of Krishna. So that is the, like, what is the essence of all the Vedas? Essence of all the Vedas is to know yourself. You're not this body, you are spirit soul, and to know who is the God, and who to have to develop a relationship with the God. So that is the essence of all the Vedic scriptures. So knowledge and bhakti. Okay, are you able to follow, right? Is it too fast?
No, Prabhuji, it's fine for me.
Okay. So Krishna is saying in these words, Manushyanam sahasreshu Manushyanam sahasresu kaschin yatati siddhaye yadatam siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvata. Out of thousands among men, no, it's verse number 3. Okay, out of thousands of men, one may endeavor for perfection, and out of thousands who achieve perfection, hardly knows him in truth. Okay, so we might be seeing, like, no, we might be seeing many people, but they will not be able to. Krishna is saying, actually, because we have very limited knowledge, right? Krishna is saying there are many living entities, and out of all the living entities, only humans have the ability to think about Krishna. And even the persons who got the human form of life, out of thousands and thousands of men, hardly any person tries to know about Krishna. So that is the rarity of a person who is trying to know who is God and who is himself, or self-realization. So for that, then Krishna goes ahead and tells to Arjuna about himself. Okay, Krishna says, Krishna actually, Krishna has three expansions. Okay, Krishna lives in Golok Vrindavan. It is the highest realm of the existence. This is the Dham of Krishna. Is the So from Golok Vrindavan, he expands as Karnodaksha Vishnu for creating the material universe. So there are actually two universes, spiritual world and material world. So in the spiritual world, the Dham of Krishna is there, means the planet where Krishna resides along with his devotees. That is called Golok Vrindavan. And this material world is created only to facilitate for the souls who wants to enjoy independent of Krishna. Because in the spiritual world, in Golok Vrindavan, everybody has a very deep loving relationship with Krishna, and everybody is always adoring, or always thinking, always affectionate towards Krishna. And if any other if any soul, by due to some reason, if they want to enjoy independently, for them this material world is created. Like means, in order to give them this illusory pleasure of being the creator, being the maintainer, and being the destroyer. Okay, so and for that Krishna, in order to create the material world, Krishna first expands himself into Karnadaksha Vishnu and creates Mahatattva, and then from Mahatattva all the material universes are created. And uh, when the universes are created, each universe is like a egg. That's why it is called Brahmanda. Anda means egg, right? So Brahmanda means it's a universal egg. Okay, so into this universe, Krishna again enters as Garbhodakasha Vishnu, and then he fills half of the universe with water, and then he lies on the Ananta Shesha at the on that water, and then from Ananta Shesha, when he lies down there, from his navel one lotus sprouts, and from there Lord Brahma was created, and Lord Brahma in turn again does the secondary creation. And uh, when Lord Brahma means why Lord is like first primary creation is done by the Supreme Personality of God, Krishna himself. Means Krishna in the form of Vishnu does the primary creation, and the secondary creation means like what is the difference between primary creation and secondary creation? Primary creation is like bringing all the vegetables, all the rice, and all the wheat flour and everything, bringing together. That is primary creation. So, and secondary creation is cutting vegetables and cooking, means cooking delicious preparations. That is secondary creation. So the primary creation of all the what are the elements required for the creation, and bringing all the souls together and bringing everything together, that is the primary creation. That part is done by Krishna. That is facilitated by Krishna, and the Brahmaji uses all these facilities, and he creates the human beings, and he creates the different living entities. So that is in detail given in Srimad Bhagavatam. So we are just discussing all this to show how Krishna is the creator and Krishna is the maintainer. So in order to maintain the universe, he entered as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. And when the living entity is created, when the human body is created, the soul is in the region of the heart that we discussed in the second chapter, right? So along with the soul, Krishna also resides in the heart of the living entity. So he is called Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. The Vishnu enters atom of the universe as a super soul. So every atom, so as a super soul, as a Paramatma, he is residing in the heart of every living entity. That is called Kshirodakshaya Vishnu. Okay, is it clear? Anybody has any questions till now? Deepak Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji.
Hina Mataji is clear for you? Savitri Mataji?
Yes, it's clear, Prabhuji.
I'm going very fast, I feel, but if you have any questions, you can stop by and ask any questions, okay? So that way Krishna created this entire material creation, okay? And then after that, Krishna says, Bhumirapo nalo vayu kimmana buddhireva cha ahankara iti yamme binna prakriti rashtrada. So although everything is created by Krishna himself, but still like and like if you see at the living entity, like for suppose take ourselves, we took birth, and when we took birth, we were given body and we didn't make our own body, right? We were in the womb of mother and we came out, and when we came out, we are helpless child, and we already have a body. Now we have nose, eyes, and everything. Everything is facilitated, and not even our parents also didn't. They didn't take any material or mix something and made this body, right? It is already made by the material nature, which is under the control of Krishna. And after we come out, we'll have different we have a land, we have water, we have to land to stay, and we have water to drink, and we have different facilities, we have roads, buildings, and mountains, clouds, rains. This everything is nicely facilitated, and we do some activity, we actually, farmers, what they do, they plow the land and plant the seeds, and plants grow up. And actually farmer is not actually growing them up, he's only planting the seeds and taking care of the crop, but he's only doing the superficial things, but actual thing is done by the material nature himself. And this material nature is, this prakriti is under the control of the supreme personality of Godhead. So even though everything is done by the supreme personality of Godhead, but this ahankaris, means the foolish people, what they think, ahankara iti me, although it constitutes, they think that they are doing everything. So here Krishna is explaining earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. Altogether, these 8 constitute my separated material energies. These are, now Krishna has different energies. This Krishna has internal energies, Krishna has external energies, and this material creation is the external energy of Krishna. Okay, and like if you see the earth, no, not earth, with how we can feel the earth by nose, means if you can smell anything, any object made of earth, right? You can smell flowers, you can smell objects, right? And water, this tongue can taste only when there is moisture. Okay, and fire only when there is light, and or sunlight, or some kind of visibility, some light is there, so like this, even unless the fire is there, the eyes cannot see. Okay, unless the air is there, the touch cannot be felt. Okay, unless ether is there, water, ears cannot do anything. So we are actually, experiencing the external energy of Krishna. For us to do anything, we are totally dependent on the external energy of Krishna, and Krishna has complete control over these all the energies. Okay. So then Krishna says, Krishna is the maintainer and the supreme personality. Matta bharataram nanyat kinchit asti dhanam jaya mai sarvamidam proktam sutre mani gana iva. So there is no truth superior to me, and everything rests on me as pearls strung on the thread. So if we see, so we saw all these energies, right? Earth, water, fire, air, and ether. And what is the basis for all these things? Krishna is saying, I am the basis. Everything is resting on me because I am controlling them. That's why everything is nicely controlled and nicely organized. So just like if you see a pearl of thread, a pearl necklace. So you see how somebody may say, ignorant person may say, oh, these pearls are nicely strung. They form a nice line. But only an intelligent person knows that there is a string that is holding all the threads, all the pearls together, right? So if means it is childish to think that uh, everything is happening by itself. Some scientists will say this universe formed, Big Bang happened, this universe formed, and then all the living entities has evolved by themselves. It's such a foolish theory, right? So if everything is evolved by themselves, where is the person who is in the middle? Means he just half evolved and half is still evolving. If you see all the animals, right from their birth, they do the certain kind of activities. If you see the humans also, right from their birth, they do certain activities like eating, sleeping, mating, defending, that kind of activities. But if we train him nicely, he will also have nice intelligence also. So there is nothing is by accident. Everything is properly planned and organized and nicely formulated by the supreme personality of Godhead. And and Krishna is saying, I am the basis for everything, and there is no superior truth to me. So and after that, Krishna says how he pervades, no, how Krishna is all pervasive and essential essence of everything. No? Krishna says about different things, no, about no. If you see Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "I am the taste of water, light of the sun, syllable Om. I am the sound in the ether, ability in the man, and natural fragrance of the earth, and heat in the fire, and life in the lives, okay, austerity in of austerity." So he describes that he is the essence of everything. So then he says, so why we are knowing all these things, we already discussed, right? If we know about Krishna perfectly, then we'll tend to develop a relationship with him. So will that what is that relation, what is the relation means? That relation is bhakti. Okay, so in order to develop bhakti, we have to know about the Krishna more and more. Okay, so then Krishna says, seeing Krishna everywhere, that is the purpose. Okay, if we see when we see Krishna, or when we see when something is arranged nicely, then we should understand that this is the energy of Krishna. This organization, this entire arrangement is done by Krishna himself. Okay, so then he, until now, Krishna explained about how he created all these external energies, right? Earth, water, fire, and ether, and our different energies, how he is the essence of each and every aspect. And then he says, this the living entity in this material world is actually under the modes of material nature, because we already discussed, right, how everything in this material world can be classified into three modes: either goodness, passion, and ignorance. Means, like if you see ourselves in the morning, we'll be, early in the morning we'll be in the mode of goodness. After some time we'll get into passion. I have to achieve this, I have to meet this. So we'll be running, doing many things. And when it becomes night, we'll be in the mode of ignorance. Means we just want to sleep off. So we are always everything, no, even the type of food, our mentality, our moods, everything can be classified into three modes. Okay, and Krishna is saying, like, a person may want think that he is independent, but actually he is under the modes of nature, and he is no, three modes keep the conditioned soul forgetful of Krishna. Okay, so and who is controlling all these modes? Krishna says about that. Okay, Daivi Hesha Gunamai Mama Maya Duratyaya Mama Mam Ev Mameva E Prapadyante Mayam Etam Tarantite. So Krishna is saying the divine energy of mind, consisting of three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome. These three modes, like which is controlling the jiva, it is very difficult to overcome. Unless one overcomes them, then only uh, they will come to the path of yoga or bhakti. So in order to get release from these three modes, but those who surrender unto Krishna can easily cross beyond it. Mm. That's why they say in if you see old cinemas or something, it's a Bhavasagar, no? Like it's a ocean of nescience. So this world, everything is like temporary, and it's filled with emotions. And in order to get one to easily cross over this material world, one has to take shelter of Krishna. So that's what Krishna is saying. So, but Krishna is saying freedom from the modes is proportionate to surrender. The how much ever you surrender, if you surrender fully, then you will be totally free. If you surrender to half, then you will be only free half. Okay, so you will only get half freedom. So the modes act to facilitate the desire of the living beings to to be separated from the God. It is not like Krishna is no very strict and he said only give this person this much freedom, not like that, because it is our desire not to be how much we want to be free from Krishna, how much we want to enjoy independent of Krishna. So the living entity has only two options: either it is under the control of Krishna or under the control of Maya or material nature. So if you are controlled under the material nature, you will be kept under the illusion that you are the controller, you are the maintainer, you are the enjoyer, like that. That is illusion. But you are under the control of Krishna, you will still enjoy, but you will enjoy with knowledge. Okay. So eating something which you don't know, which you never saw, that kind of objects is eating in ignorance, right? But eating some things which you know and how it tastes and what will be its reaction, how it will be helpful, how it will be nourishing, what will nourish you and what will not nourish you, with that knowledge is different. Okay. So in the same way, like a living entity can be in two ways. It can either be in with knowledge and be with Krishna, or be in ignorance and be with Maya. So Krishna says, even though no he comes, no, there are four types of people. Okay. Four types of duskritis, no, duskritas means the impious people who doesn't surrender to Krishna. Namam duskrit no muda prapadyante naradama maya apakrita jnana asurim bhavam ashrita. So this is verse number 15. Okay. So Krishna is saying the four kind of people who doesn't surrender to him means the mudas means who are grossly foolish and hardworking asses. They think we have to work and enjoy, but they never enjoy. They just work and die just like that. No, that's why they are working as hardworking asses. And then Naradama means uncivilized people who consider the lowest among the mankind. Some people like who are uncivilized, who are living like animals, they don't surrender to Krishna. And Maya aparhuta gnana, some people who are like no great, they think that I'm the great scientist, no, or no something like that, I'm the greatest of the intellectuals. That kind of persons also think that he can do everything. He's overly illusioned, or overly uh, his confidence is illusioned confidence. Okay. That kind of persons also they don't surrender. And asurim bhava master, some kind of national leaders who are like more demoniac, who wants to kill innocent people just for the sake of their illusory the egoistic things. That kind of people also, they cannot also surrender. It is clearly shown in these images. Okay. Mudas and naradamas and maya aparhuta gnana and asurim bhava master, these are the four kinds of people that don't surrender to Krishna. And Krishna also says the four kinds of people who surrender to him. They are called Sukritina. Sukritina means uh, pious people. Chaturvida bhajanti mam gnana sukrito arjuna arto jignasura artharti gnani cha bharatarshava. Artha means distressed. Artharti means who is desiring wealth. Jignasu, who is inquiring of curious, who wants to know, more knowledge. Okay. And Gnani, one who is in search of knowledge. Jignasu means curious person. So these are the people who surrender to Krishna. Means like somebody who is in distress. No, some we got some disease or something. That kind of people, they don't know how to deal with this, and so they depend on God. So, and some people who wants wealth, he is lot of he is going through lot of difficulty financially, and he prays Krishna, and and that is also like approaching Krishna, desiring of wealth. Okay. Like Artha means, the pastime of Gajendra, right? He was caught by crocodile and he was helpless. He was not trying to get out of that. No, any deceased person also can be considered as like that. Okay. And that kind of person, they surrender to Krishna. And Artharthi, somebody who is desiring for wealth, like example Dhruva Maharaj. And Jignasu, example Shaunaka Rishi. or any person who wants to know more, he wants to know more about God, that kind of jignasu. And gnani means who knows what is what. Example, Sukadeva Goswami and four Kumaras. So these are the four kinds of. Krishna doesn't say these are these people, they want something from me, that's why they are surrendering. No, Krishna doesn't say these are Jnanicha, but these are pious people. They are Sukritina. However you come to Krishna, you are pious. Okay, the goal of the goal is you somewhere or other you come to Krishna or become Krishna conscious. So these are the people who surrender to Krishna. So so but Krishna says, but this even it doesn't make, it doesn't say whoever is going through the suffering condition everybody surrender to Krishna, or whoever wants to money they will come to Krishna. Not like that. Only the very fortunate soul, they will know that there is a person who is giving us everything, and if we just approach him, all our problems will be solved, and for eternity, it will be solved forever. mm. uh, these are very intelligent persons. That's why Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavan Man Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudurlabha. Means after many births and deaths, he who actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me the cause of all causes, and that is all. Such a great soul is very rare. So Krishna is calling them Mahatmas. Whoever comes to him are called Mahatmas. It's not like Mahatma is somebody who fasts or who does freedom fighting or something like that. They are not Mahatmas. Mahatma means somebody who is a devotee of Krishna. So then, but some persons, instead of coming to Krishna, they go to some demigods. No? So if they are like, no, if you worship this if you do this puja to this god and this vrata to this god, you'll get this thing. Means like, I don't want to name the gods. Okay, so this demigod worship, like it's like, it's you can get the results from the demigods, but the results will be temporary. Like, but you have 100 rupees, you could directly using that, like you are lost somewhere, and you have $100. Using that $100, you can go back home and be always and put a full stop for all your sufferings uh, for all the time to come. Or you can give that $100 to somebody who can take you from this point to this point only. Means we will only give certain material benefits to you. So there is a situation. So we can only worship, or we can only love one person. That is the nature of the conditioned soul. Our conditioned nature, our soul, every soul has fully love only one person. So that one person should be Krishna. So we can't know today this god, tomorrow this god, tomorrow this god, tomorrow this devata, like that. If you do 7 days 7 gods, it won't be like, no, not much effective, no. But we should always respect demigods, because the demigods are the representatives of Krishna. Because Krishna only deals with the devotees who are, fully satisfied, and who fully want to dedicate their life to him. But still, if the other living entities want something, like for suppose the king is there, the king will deal friendly with his friends, right? Or who that are with the citizens who wants to be like who likes to be his friends. But someone wants something else from king, like I want some material facility, or some wealth. He will send his representatives, he will send ministers or his servants or his to address the situation. So the demigods are all the representatives of Krishna. We should actually respect them, but we should actually do devotion or perform devotional service to Krishna. Hmm? That we should not do. Okay, we should keep in mind. Then this chapter is little lengthy. We may take two two classes. Okay. Okay. How many? 30 verses are there. So I think we can finish it up. Okay. So, but out of bewilderment only we go to the demigods. Okay. So, but what is the how can we get out of this bewilderment? Uh, Krishna says, Krishna says, Krishna knows Krishna is never covered, and like we are covered now. When we come into this material world, we are covered by the three modes of material nature. But Krishna is always free from the Maya. So, and he is never covered. And the covering of living entity, Krishna says, Vedaham samatitani vartamani cha Arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu veda na kasyana. So Krishna says, I know everything, the past, present, and future, all happening in the present, and all the things that to come in future. Okay, but no one knows me in full. Okay, but who can, who can get free from this illusion, and who can approach Krishna, and how who can know Krishna is yesh yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punya karmana chedvanda mohasam nirmukta bhajate mam dridhavrata, one who sins are eradicated and one who acts piously in previous and in present lives, and one who is free from all the dualities and delusion, and engage himself in my devotion service. So it means like only very fortunate soul who is completely free from all his previous sinful activities, or one who is righteous at present and previously also, and one who is free from all dualities, means all the confusions caused by the material nature, one who is free from all these things, only that kind of person only can approach Krishna. So means why what is the difference in approaching a demigod and Krishna? Because a demigod can easily give the results, but the results by the demigods are temporary. If you see any demigod, no, benediction by Lord Shiva, benediction by Ganesha, any demigod, any Baba, anybody, they are very temporary. Actually, Krishna says they are actually coming from him only, but through them, because this our bhakti is addressed at a wrong place. That's why it is temporary. So unless we actually, with proper conviction, with proper understanding, we like you have the same principle, but if you apply it a wrong place, you don't get the right result, right? In the same way, Krishna is saying the demigod worship, it is only out of illusion. It is only temporary. So, but one who is surrendered to Krishna, he will be freed from all the sins and he will be perfect his life, and he can attain the perfection and he can go back to Godhead in this lifetime. That is the essence of Krishna's message through this chapter. If you have any questions or comments, you can take up here. I think I was a little fast. No, I was like, but if you are able to follow, then you can fine. Any questions? Okay, we'll end it here. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.